This measure is the most often used index of trustworthy data in applied behavior analysis. Now, when we talk about trustworthy, right, it's a little broad, right, a little subjective, but we do have ways of making sure data is good, right? We want good data, especially when we have technicians taking our data. We need a good way to verify that this data is trustworthy and we can use it. According to Cooper, this is straight from Cooper, and I thought this was a good question just so we are clear on why this type of index or this type of measurement is so important. So this measure is the most often used index of trustworthy data, meaning this measure is going to tell us more so than the others when our data is trustworthy. So is it accuracy, reliability, validity, or interobserver agreement? Now, good data is what? Good data is accurate. Okay, we're trying to measure the true value. Good data is reliable. We want to be able to measure the same thing over and over again. Good data is valid. We want to be sure we are measuring what we intend to measure. All three very important, all important aspects of trustworthy data. But if we want the most, used index of trustworthy data, we need interobserver agreement, meaning two or more people are taking data and then we compare that data. Okay. That way we can really get a sense of, is that data really accurate, reliable, and valid? It's difficult to know if data is accurate, reliable, and valid unless someone else takes that data and we compare it. If only one person is always taking the data, what are you comparing that to? How do you truly know if your data is accurate, reliable, and valid? That's why it's a great idea for you, the BCBA, to sometimes take data along with your RBTs. Are we collecting the same data? If not, we have an issue. Again, why is interobserver agreement so important and not just used for research and experiments like some people think? We should be using interobserver agreement in the field. Okay, this is how we're going to indicate our data is trustworthy. I'm the BCBA. I measure what you measure as a technician. We're getting the same thing. I know my data is trustworthy. So the most often used index of trustworthy data in applied behavior analysis is interobserver agreement. Hillary is playing the game red light, green light with her class. Tommy, one of her students, continues to push the other students. Hillary tells Tommy to sit in a chair and watch the class for 2 rounds before he can join again. This would be considered what? What is the question asking? The question is asking about Hillary's intervention. There are many, many different types of punishment and many, many different types of timeouts. And we need to be familiar with all of them because they will ask you across the board these different types of timeouts. One, you need to know them, but two, we need to make sure whenever we're using punishment, it's ethical. So we need to be sure if we're trying to implement a timeout procedure, we know what we're doing and we're doing it correctly. In this case, what happens? What is Hillary utilizing? Well, they're playing this game. Tommy is pushing other students. So Hillary says, Tommy, sit in a chair and watch the class for 2 rounds before he can join again. So we have things like exclusionary timeouts, non-exclusionary timeouts, partition timeouts, timeout ribbons, and then we have things like contingent observation. And in contingent observation, it's exactly what it sounds like. The learner, whoever engages in the maladaptive or unwanted behavior, is pulled aside and made to observe what is going on without access to reinforcement. What is occurring here? Well, Hillary is telling Tommy, sit on the side, sit in a chair, watch the class for 2 rounds, no reinforcement, and then we join again. This is contingent observation. It's not restitutional overcorrection. With restitutional overcorrection, we are repairing the environment into a better state than it was before. With positive practice, we are practicing the desired behavior over and over again. And then timeout ribbon, you're given a little ribbon or a mark or something indicating you are not allowed access to reinforcement. This, of course, is C. Contingent on Tommy's pushing other students, he now has to observe these students without accessing reinforcement. Hillary's intervention is C, contingent observation. Which of the following could be considered acts of counter control? Now, I included this because as I was going through the Cooper book reviewing the other day, I came across counter control, and I remember this coming up a few times in some of my classes and some of the practice questions and things like that. And I think it's an important term to know in case it's you ever see it. It's one of the few times they actually explicitly mention an emotional reaction to the environment, basically. And in counter control, the learner is trying to fight back, basically, against the quote unquote controller. And in Cooper, they explicitly list these 3 items as types of counter control. And you may be saying, well, this isn't really a practice question. No, but it's more of a teaching question. Okay. Remember, we're just practicing here. Too often people are focused when they're practicing on doing as many questions as possible. They miss fluency. Okay. And they're not focused on getting questions correctly. We're just learning, right? We want to be as familiar as possible. The old analogy, you want as many bullets in your gun as possible. Be prepared for everything. So we're just trying to review counter control. Which of the following could be active counter control? Well, escape is certainly counter control, right? If you're trying to get away from someone controlling you, escaping. Attack, right? Actually being aggressive. And then passive resistance, just resisting their attempts at controlling you. Which of the following are considered active counter control? Well, of course, D, all the above. Again, just a quick little review question. Familiarizing you with all aspects of verbiage and terminology that you might see. Okay. I can remember when I was studying for my exam and I would take practice exams and I would see terms I didn't recognize. Okay. As I became more familiar with some of the more obscure terms, it actually became a lot easier to answer the questions. Okay. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. When you drop your daughter off at daycare, you give them 5 full bottles to feed her with throughout the day. If you want to measure how many bottles they use, what would be the best measurement system to use? Measurement question. What is the question asking? They're asking about the measurement system for how many bottles the daycare is using. Be very careful here, okay? We want the best answer, right? Always pick the best answer. So in this case, how are you going to know how many bottles they used? Well, you're going to count the bottles, right? I send 5 bottles full. I get 3 bottles empty back. I can just count how many bottles they used. However, were you there to observe them using the bottles? You are not, okay? So as tempting as it is to maybe pick frequency, because you're not picking rate, you're not taking it per day, right? Well, you might be, okay? But there's no indication in the question, right? The question just wants to know how many, right? Not with the time component. Frequency would be effective. However, we're not there actually directly observing the bottles used, okay? So frequency is not going to be effective. Now, again, we're counting, don't get me wrong, right? So through permanent product, right, we will count. But with frequency, what do we need to be doing? We need to be actually observing the behavior occurring. That's the benefit of permanent product. You don't have to observe them feeding her the bottles to be able to measure. Again, best answer, right? We need the most complete answer. Frequency and permanent product can both be effective here. The most complete answer is permanent product. With permanent product, I don't actually have to see them feed her to measure. With frequency, I do. And then enter response time, of course, is not. It would be time in between bottles, which, of course, again, we would need to see them, and we're not, so we can't measure that. Permanent products is giving us the ability, based on how many bottles they give us back, to indicate how much did you feed your daughter or my daughter throughout the day. Hillary, again, a BCBA arrives at our RBT session for a supervision meeting. Hillary sees this family once or twice a month. Today, her client and his parents are ready with balloons and a cake to celebrate her birthday. They also want to give her a $20 Starbucks gift card. How should Hillary respond? Trying to do multiple questions on the gift policy, which is now updated for the most current ethical list or guide or task list, whatever you want to call it. It's a big change, right? This was a very hot issue in the old task list where we weren't allowed to take any gifts whatsoever. What does the new ethical code say? The new ethical code says we can take gifts of $10 of value or less if they aren't routine and if they aren't expected, okay? In this case, what is the question asking? Well, they want to know what should Hillary do in response? Remember, we're looking for best answer here, right? So Hillary got to her session. They gave her balloons and cake to celebrate her birthday. How nice of them, right? They also want to give her this $20 Starbucks gift card. Should she leave immediately to avoid any dual relationship or conflict of interest? Well, if her birthday happens once a month and it was out of the blue and it wasn't expected, she's on the clock, she's still going to work, and her parents or the client's parents are just doing a nice thing for her. This is acceptable. This is okay. Okay. She does not need to just leave immediately, right? We want to stress the importance of rapport and having good relationships with our clients. Being grateful for this nice gesture should be part of rapport building. Now, if she's on the clock, she needs to be delivering analytic services. But aren't there many, many ways you can teach the client in this situation? Sure. Okay. So she does not need to leave immediately. But you thank them for the party, eat a piece of cake, and take the gift card. All right. Should she take the gift card? Well, what's our rule? $10 or less. $20 Starbucks gift card, over the line. Look, on the exam, we need to be black and white about our ethical code. You need to know letter of the law and go by letter of the law. That's just the way it is. Okay. $20 is too much. C, refuse the gift card, but accept a single slice of cake if offered, assuming the slice of cake is less than $10. Okay, she doesn't have to accept it, but so far this is the best answer. I'm not taking the gift card, but I will take a piece of cake to be nice if the cake is less than $10. Okay. Better than A, better than B. Not perfect, but still the best answer so far. And D, turn down the offer of cake, but take the gift card. Definitely not. Definitely not. We cannot take the gift card. So B and D are definitely out. A, we should not leave immediately. Okay. 1, we need to be respectful. 2, maybe it's cultural. We're not sure, right? There's nothing unethical about staying here and just being grateful. So our best answer is going to be C. Refuse the $20 gift card. It's over the limit, but accept a single slice of cake if offered, assuming the slice of cake is less than 10. Does she have to accept the cake? No, but she can. You order a package off of Wayfair. They send you a UPS tracking number, which takes you to a site that tells you your package is estimated to be delivered to your front door between 10 and 12 p.m. Which of the following reinforcement schedules best matches the delivery schedule? Basic reinforcement schedules. Too often when I work with students, they are so worried about compound schedules, they forget about basic schedules. Compound schedules are just 2 or more basic schedules combined. You still need to know our basic schedules. You have to know fixed ratio, variable ratio, fixed interval, and variable interval. Quickly, fixed ratio and variable ratio are based on a number of responses. Fixed interval, variable interval are based on time. Fixed means it's unchanging. Variable means it's average. And it's that simple, right? If we know what fixed and variable are, if we know what ratio and interval are, all we need to do after that is combine them. It's very, very easy, okay? But you need to know those basics. The question wants to know, what is the question asking? What reinforcement schedule best matches the delivery schedule? Well, our delivery schedule is set to occur between 10 and 12 p.m. Does this look like a response-based schedule to you or an interval-based schedule, time-based? To me, it looks time-based. Think about the schedule, 10 to 12 p.m., meaning you can open your front door as many times as you want before 10 a.m. You're not receiving reinforcement. The only time you're getting reinforcement is after that time has been met. So if we choose interval, now we need to determine fixed or variable. Well, fixed would be a very steady 10 a.m. schedule. This says 10 and 12. Could be 10:15, 11:45, 10:30. We're not sure. Meaning it's an average, meaning it's variable. Which of the following reinforcement schedules best matches its delivery schedule? Well, we're going to take the average interval and we're going to make it 11 a.m. So sometime in between 10 and 12 p.m. on average, your package will get there. It's a variable interval schedule. You conduct a functional analysis on a client's pinching behavior. The client frequently pinches others around him. Which of the following answer choices offers the best explanation of your results to the client's parents? Okay, scenario question. You have to put yourself in the shoes of a BCBA who just conducted a functional analysis, and now you're explaining something to the client's parents. When they give explanation questions, they want to know multiple things. Do you know that we shouldn't be using technical language? We should be avoiding jargon. We need to be careful about what we do and don't guarantee. We don't guarantee outcomes. We don't guarantee we know something, okay? even a functional analysis, the highest level of determining function is still just a hypothesis, right? Yes, it's more effective than other analyses, but we're never 100% sure. So we have to be careful of our wordage. So in this case, how are we going to explain the results of a functional analysis? A, the functional analysis concluded that pinching is attention-seeking behavior. We now know for sure that the client engages in pinching for attention. Overall, it's not horrible, right? Except for the we know for sure. Now we are married to this idea, right? What if it turns out it's not attention? What if we did the functional analysis wrong? Well, we just guaranteed the client it was. And maybe they've been changing what they're doing at home based on our guarantee. You got to be careful with word choice. Don't make these guarantees, okay? You might have to stand by later. B, when we ignored the client, pinching occurred more often compared to other conditions, okay? This tells us that pinching is most likely used to gain attention. All right, pretty good, right? They might not know what conditions is, but other than that, it's pretty good, right? You can figure that out. We ignored the client, pinching occurred more often, most likely to gain attention. B isn't bad. C, after several conditions, including contingent escape, alone, and contingent attention, we have established that pinching is maintained by positive reinforcement. Okay, it's a lot of jargon, a lot of technicalities. I can even picture a parent saying, okay, what is contingent escape? What's alone? What is contingent attention? What is positive reinforcement? Does it mean the behavior is reinforced? They could go on, right? You're opening up yourself to a long, drawn-out discussion about what all this jargon means. Let's simplify it even more than that. We ignore the client, pinching occurred probably for attention. And then D, the client engages in attention-seeking behavior in the form of pinching based on the results of the analysis. This is most likely a product of his autism. First part, not too bad, right? Based on our analysis, it's attention-seeking behavior. We're not blaming it on his autism. You never blame the behavior on the quote-unquote disability, okay? This is a big no-no. D is definitely wrong. Our best answer is going to be the one in simplest terms, okay, which is B. We ignored the client. Pinching occurred more often compared to other conditions. Tells us the pinching is most likely, not guaranteed, most likely used to gain attention. You're attempting to teach your client to imitate your behaviors. Whenever you give the SD to copy me, the client will sometimes partially imitate the behavior. If you wanted the client to fully imitate, what method would be best to use given this information? I think this is a pretty straightforward question. You should be able to predict and answer this question without even looking at the answer choices. You want the client to fully imitate. Your client will sometimes partially imitate. If we want to go from partial to full, in other words, successive approximations, terminal behavior, what are we going to use? Are we going to use punishment? Why would we punish partial imitation of behavior? We don't want to decrease the behavior, right? Would we shape? Absolutely. You have partial imitation, start shaping that behavior up, right? Shaping is perfect for the scenario. What about antecedent interventions? Well, maybe so, right? But there's no clear reason to use an antecedent intervention yet, okay? Shaping is a much better answer and much more clear. And then D, change to a variable reinforcement schedule. We're not even sure about the reinforcement schedule. It doesn't mention the reinforcement schedule. Don't invent information. Just use the information given. Knowing this, going from partial to full, let's just shape up the behavior. James took his 7-year-old son out to lunch. When the waitress came by, James ordered his food and then looked at his son and said, "Tell the waitress what you want." James' son then ordered his own food, and James reinforced his son with praise. What type of teaching is this? Again, I think a pretty straightforward, easy question. Don't overthink it. We're looking for our type of teaching. Well, what is James doing? He took his son out to lunch. Waitress came by. James got his food, looked at his son and said, SD, tell the waitress what you want. James' son ordered his food. James reinforced. He used a naturally occurring situation. He used this opportunity, this incident, to teach his son something new. Did he use incidental teaching? Absolutely, right? Incidental teaching is the same as naturalistic, what just so happens to be C. Not a discrete trial. This is a form of naturalistic or incidental teaching. Our answer is going to be D.